Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89. Well, I love the Addams Family. I'm a big Addams Family fan. I am an Addams, I identify as an Addams. And I really loved the TV show, which I saw in syndication, and the movies when I was younger. And I had no idea how much drama there was involved with the first film, particularly, and in the box office of the second film, which I just found out recently because after watching Wednesday, I had a bit of a Addams Family marathon. I wanted to go back home and visit the family. So I watched all 64 episodes of the original 1964-66 series, the 16 episodes of the Hanna-Barbera 1973 animated series, and about 5 episodes and a few individual stories because some episodes had separate stories in the one episode from the 1992 Hanna-Barbera series. And then I watched the new Addams Family, which did 65 episodes for Saban Entertainment in 1998. And then I watched, which is something I don't think I'd ever seen unless I saw it on TV as a kid and can remember, but the 1977 Halloween with the Addams Family TV movie. It was great to see the cast back and see them in colour. Everyone was there except Granny, because she was sick and then she died the next year. But it wasn't the best story, but who cares, they're back, so I sort of enjoyed it. But I saved the two main films, for last. And it's funny because I really remembered them so well. I didn't really find anything new in them because I've seen them so many times, but it was just nice to see them. And I don't think I've watched them since buying a widescreen TV. I think the last time I watched them was when I first got them on DVD years ago, before I had a widescreen TV. Like, we're talking like 10 years ago. And that's an issue as well because of the rights as far as DVD and VHS and all that. But oh God, the rights. Okay, 20th Century Fox, Barry Sonnenfeld through 20th Century Fox originally tried to negotiate with Charles Addams himself in 1986 for the rights to do a movie. But he died in 1998, and his wife, he had 4 wives, I'm not sure, I think there was some fighting about the rights and different rights for different Addams Family eras and that. That's a whole nother story. Basically, I think it was T. Addams, his last widow, had the rights, and she sold them to Orion, and they wanted to make a TV series, which would have been great. I don't know if that would have been better because we had more Addams than just the one film. But they wouldn't sell the rights to 20th Century Fox for a film. So Barry Sonnenfeld ended up working for Orion on this film because he just really wanted to make a film. They couldn't get the director they wanted, so he ended up directing it. Tim Burton was busy with Batman Returns, and they had a lot of problems. They had to do a lot of rewrites. They had to do some reshoots. They had some problems on the set. The director of photography, and I love the film, it looks beautiful, Owen Roisman, he quit, and then his replacement, Gail Tattison, they got sick and had to leave as well, so Barry Sonnenfeld ended up having to do the director of photography and the director at the same time. He was very stressed. It was his first film. Raul Julia had a burst blood vessel in his eye, so that shit around him for a while. Poor Angelica Houston, they literally changed her appearance, which I didn't realise. They had some sort of gauze and string devices behind her head under a wig to lift the corners of her eyes at certain angles and just to make her look a certain way, and that was very painful. And if she took it off during the day, it would take hours to put back on. And if she didn't, she'd end up with migraines and rashes at the end of the day. So, and she also, I think she had a corset or something built into the costume, and it was a bit of a nightmare for her. So there were just a lot of problems on the film. And then the studio started to get scared because they had had a couple of bombs, and the film had gone over budget by $5 million already, gone from $25 million to $30 million. And they were going up against Steven Spielberg's Hook, and they started to get afraid. So they ended up selling the film to Paramount, although they could only sell the domestic rights because the international rights had already been sold through or to Columbia or something, which affected how it was marketed and so forth and distributed, which was difficult because after the initial video release, rental release, they couldn't really release it again internationally, and they didn't release it on DVD. So I was unable to get it. I got the video at first, and I watched that to death, but I wasn't able to get the video. I had to buy the US one, and fortunately I had a multi-zone player so I could watch it. But it wasn't until 2013 that they sorted those rights out, and then we were able to get it here. And I think that's the last time I watched it was when I got a new copy of it, and that's more than a decade ago. So now the film did really well. It made more than they thought. It made 113 domestically, and it was always about $100 million back then. It's like if a film made $100 million domestically, that was really good. It made $113 million, made 24 on its opening, and it made another, I think, 78 internationally. So it made 191 million, nearly 200 million, which is a big deal. It was really successful. And, you know, for the most part, it went well. They wanted to do a sequel. Unfortunately, the guy who developed the series sued Paramount because they bought the rights to the cartoons, but they really had made the series like a sort of amalgamation between the cartoons and the characters we were familiar with in the series, because Charles Addams, and that's where it gets kind of tricky, Charles Addams actually redefined the characters and wrote profiles for them and all that during for the production of the series, but while he was still producing the cartoons, so the cartoons still contained that. So, but they settled out of court so they could make the film series and make the second film and everything. And I had no idea the second film didn't do as well. I'd heard it hadn't done as well, you know, but I sort of thought like just made a few million less or something. And I assumed it had been made on less money because to me it looked cheaper. But actually it cost $47 million and only made $48 million domestically, so that was not good. Made another, I think, 60 something. It made 111 all up internationally, so you can work out the math. But yeah, I was really baffled. I'm like, why didn't it do as well? Barry Sonnenfeld felt that they had promoted the film exactly the same as the first film, like they, you know, think that people are stupid. They like the first one, we'll like this one, so we'll make another film just like that. Artistically, they made a different film, but I think they promoted it the same way. They didn't really focus on Pubert and Uncle Fester's story, which was sort of different. So I think people sort of felt like, well, I've seen the Addams Family, I don't need to see the Addams Family. So I kind of agree with him there. And the other issue was the look of the film was very different. But I think what affected it the most is I think politics hurt it, because the film came out on November 19, just in time for Thanksgiving, like the first one. But this one actually had a Thanksgiving story, and it was a evil, I think what they call revisionist. So basically, growing up in Australia, I sort of knew the story of the Pilgrims and what happened, and I didn't really have any cultural issues with that. You know, whereas in America, a lot of people have been told this other white version of the story, and when anyone tells the real story or anything close to it, people get very uncomfortable, very angry, and it's sort of like one of the early culture war issues that sort of existed back then. And I think a lot of people went to the film and they weren't happy with that part of the film, and it had bad word of mouth. I think that really affected it. And they do go fairly hard on the politics in the film. Now, being a little pale white kid with dark hair who was bullied, it was very different. It was artistic and sort of goth before it was goth. I got bullied a lot, particularly by two brothers who were blonde and bronze, and they were the football and track star kids. They bullied me and abused me quite bad for years, and I resented them. And I really understood what they were saying in that film, and I saw it as true. The people who were supposed to be the good people, the beautiful people, they were always the most evil and cruel and bad people, and they got away with everything because of this idea that somehow they were good and the other people were the bad. The people who looked different had to be bad. Or wrong all the time. It's always just these people were put up on the pedestals, always perfect and right, and I really felt that, particularly just coming out of primary school before seeing the films. So I think a lot of people went to that film and they didn't see themselves in that film. They saw themselves being mocked, and they felt very much like they were on the outside of the Addams Family looking in. And also visually, the look of the films was a lot more cartoony. They changed the design of the house. They changed the look of the house from the outside. The original film, they built the real house on scale on a location. They filmed there. It looked real. You felt like you really were in the real world, and the Addams Family were real. In this film, you felt like you were going into their world, into the cartoon world, and they did. And it's weird because I saw a little video where Wednesday was taking us on a tour of the house. And you can sort of see she goes out the back onto the set, and it looks like they're filming on location. It looks like real distance in the background. And I'm like, did they film on location, or did they build such a good force perspective set that the person on the set with their camera for ET, filming it looked like they really were on a hill. I'm not sure, but either way, in the film, it looked cheap. It looked like it was just done on a set. It looked like it was just all filmed on a set. It just looked really, really cheap. And like I said, if you felt like you were going into their world, their very small little cartoon world, instead of, the Addams coming into our world and being real. So I think that hurt the film as well. And they were trying really hard to look like the cartoons, which weren't as sophisticated, and they didn't have the beauty and the romance of the original film. And just also to change that between the two films, to make these two visually different films, didn't make any sense, because they were supposed to be a sequel, and it felt like a mild reboot, because it focused more on the cartoons. Of course, part of that was because of the lawsuit, of course, because it was less like the series, although the series didn't look quite like the movies. But I'm kind of working out part of why that happened. They just leaned really hard on the animated, because that's all they actually had the rights to, even though the animated cartoons were, like I said, altered for the TV series. So, but that didn't work, because the cartoons are very dark, and not everyone gets the cartoons. The cartoons were done for the New Yorker. It was a literary magazine. It was very snobby, and a lot of people didn't get the original Addams Family cartoons. They were a bit niche. So to make a film more based on them, it did sort of alienate some of the audience. And I think the political stuff about Thanksgiving alienated some of the audience. And then the sort of focusing on diversity and basically showing the outcasts as the good ones, and the majority, the I don't want to say the normies, as the bad people that they usually are, because they're spoiled, they've got entitlement, and they're used to getting their way. And there's some great moments where they are bullying the hell out of these people, and you see just how racism is used here, and how racist it is that when they're casting the play, all the pretty girls, the blonde girls, get all the lead roles, and it's the diverse kids and that who get lumped into the other roles, and just the way they depict Native Americans and the racism there. It's quite political. It's brilliant, and I believe it's 100% correct, but some people wouldn't have seen it that way, and probably wouldn't have recommended it to their other conservative, right-wing, pretty blonde friends. So I can kind of understand now why the film didn't do as well, but I had no idea that it had problems. And then apparently Raul Julia was sick during filming. Angelica Houston said you could tell he was having trouble eating and he was losing weight, and he died not long after that. And I thought that was the end of the series. I thought that's why the film series ended. It was more because of the money. And it does explain a lot of the things. Like I never understood why there wasn't special editions of the films, why there weren't just more merchandise, because even though the first film had done well, it surprised them, and then the second film didn't do so well, and they just sort of said no. And they sold it to Saban, and he made a film called The Addams Family Reunion, which is sort of a pilot for the series The New Addams Family, which he made in 1998, and that was sort of the end of it. I just assumed it ended because no one wanted to come back and do it without Raul Julia, because how can you have the Addams Family without Gomez, and to recast, so they just sort of all, I thought that was the reason, but it was mostly money. And so far as the rights go, because Columbia and Orion were distributing international, that affected how the DVDs were done. Like, you couldn't get it on DVD in Australia for a long time, and I had to buy the American one and watch that. And now we do have it, and now it's being released in Blu-ray, I think, everywhere. And there's also the HD version. And the HD version put back an extended version of the Mamushka, which apparently it was longer, and screenings, people didn't like it, so they shortened it. Now, fans knew about it because it's on the soundtrack. I never particularly liked it, but that was like the main selling point of the 4K version, was that they had this extra scene, and you could watch the original version or the extended version, which just basically branches that scene. So I've seen the scene, it's okay, it's fun, but what I wanted was deleted scenes. I know there was more stuff that was shot that wasn't used, a lot of little gags which didn't take up much time, but the film was 1:35. I think they could have slipped a few more in. They easily could have done an extended version. There's an interview with Barry Sonnenfeld which goes for 16 minutes on the HK 4K version of 4K HD, and he obviously filmed it from home because it was released in 2001 during the you-know-what. So they probably would have done a better job had they, but yeah, so they released it for the 30th anniversary basically, and I didn't even know it had happened until just recently. But I'm glad it got a 4K release. It's on Blu-ray and 4K. It does look beautiful because the original video version was very, it looked like it all been filmed in sunlight, and the later DVD version, it's got more contrast and more blues and more reds, and it does look better, and it's a very different version. The later video version that we got here in Australia, which is different from the American one. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about the films. I love them. I wanted to do a video about them. I just wanted to share what I found about the films because I didn't know any of this had happened. And yeah, I just really enjoyed watching them again. I can see myself watching them regularly like I used to. I don't know why I don't watch them more. They're just great. But I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Yep, bye.